Up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 95. We're here to recap a really fun week 7. Lot to get to tonight as we're in the heart of the SEC schedule. We're here in mid October now. Getting to it's all a fun part of the season, but when you get into this part, you get into the middle and towards the stretch run, it gets really interesting, especially this year as we've talked about so many times the last few weeks that there's so much parity within the game of college football right now, and there's a lot of teams that feel like they're still in it and that are still in it. So we're going to get right into our week 7 recaps. And Carden, I've been waiting to get on here and talk to you about this, and I know you got some thoughts on this Auburn LSU game. Obviously didn't go Auburn's way really from the beginning. Ends in a 48-18 loss, but the floor is yours. What did you see Saturday night in Baton Rouge?
I saw a lot of the same stuff that we saw against Texas A&M. I mean, team came out, seemed flat, and when they got down 17-0, it's like that. The game was over. I mean, essentially the game was over at that point. There was nothing Auburn could do offensively. This is the only highlight is Auburn finally broke the under 100 yards passing against a Power 5 team. So I believe it was 6 games in a row that they were held under 100 yards passing. They had 154 yards this weekend. Ran the ball okay, ran it for 140 yards. Jeremiah Cobb was the leading rusher at 69 yards on 10 carries. But, man, it was just – I didn't think Auburn was going to win this game. It's the same thing as I said about Texas A&M. I didn't think Auburn was going to win this game, but I thought that they were going to be much more competitive, especially coming off of the Georgia game where they ran for 200 yards. Their offense looked like it, had some identity to it. They were able to have protection a little bit for the quarterbacks. They were able to create some gaps to run through, and it's like the off week just put us back to square one. You'd think coming off that big offensive showing against Georgia, taking the number 1 team down to the wire, and then having an off week, getting healthy, being able to game plan for 2 weeks against a team, you feel like that would help you. And usually, it does help you. It gives you the upper hand. And, I just seemed like Auburn was just sluggish and had no answer for anything. There was no identity on the offensive side of the football. It's like I said, they were back to square one. One of the most frustrating games I've seen for sure. I do think that people need to pump the brakes on, hating on Hugh Freeze. There's been a lot of slack come Hugh Freeze's way. And I said, I believe it was it was actually during our previews when we were previewing Auburn. I said there would be this stretch right here, and Auburn was probably going to lose 3 games in a row. Well, it's happened. And then I said, how is Auburn going to answer after losing 3 games in a row? And then you got Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and teams like that. How are they going to answer? And the fan base is acting like this is the end of the world. I don't know what fan came into this season expecting Auburn to win 9-10 games. They were out of their minds. I've been saying max at best 7-win football team, but probably going to go 6-6. I said it in the preview, and it's what it's shaping up to be. Potentially 7-5, but it's probably going to be a 6-6 type season. Nothing to be, hang your heads about. But back off Hugh Freeze, man. I mean, he came in. It's hard to make a good cake when your recipe is doo-doo. It's all I'm going to say. The roster he's got is not worth a crap. Now, I am tired of hearing him say that. He said it after every single game Auburn's lost this year is the roster's just not there. We can't compete. I get it. We all get it. I understand. But I wish he would quit saying that. I really do. It feels like he's kind of leaning on it like too much of a crutch a little bit. But I understand where he's coming from. The roster is just not on par with teams like this, with teams like A&M, with teams like Georgia, with teams like LSU. It's just not on par yet. I understand that. Harsin did not do him any favors the previous 2 years in the recruiting cycles and then the transfer portal getting guys in. He pushed a lot of guys out. So I understand where that's coming from. But the fans have got to back off Hugh Freeze. He's doing everything he can. There's not really a whole lot to do with this roster right now. They're okay, but they're definitely not to the caliber to compete at the top with every other team that's at the top of the SEC. But it was really frustrating because it was just like nothing could get going. They couldn't lean on the run game. They couldn't lean on the passing game. The switching in and out of quarterbacks is still driving me nuts. I mean, there was I believe it was the third quarter or might have been the end of the second quarter, actually. Robbie gets the ball. We're on our own 20, 25, whatever it was. Robbie marches it down the field, and at the 50-yard line or the 49-yard line, they take him out and put Peyton in. And then they ended up not doing anything else after that. And the only thing that bothers me there is why kill the hot hand? You know, if Peyton's the one driving them, don't take him out and put Robbie in. But if Robbie's the one driving, don't take him out and put Peyton in. It's just that's a little baffling, and it's very frustrating as a fan. Obviously, we don't know the game plan. We don't know what's going on the sidelines, but it's just it kind of makes you beg the question why. That's what's the deal? Let them continue to drive out. I mean, it can't be any worse than what's been happening. But I mean, hats off to LSU. They had a fantastic game plan. They dominated. They executed on every side of the ball. Jaden Daniels did get hit one time really hard again. I mean, he's continuing that streak of getting absolutely laid out at least once every single ball game. I feel like he loves it. I don't understand. But he did get down a couple of times. He slid. He had some unnecessary slides, but props to him. He's learned to get down and not take so many bad hits. But they ran the ball really well. I mean, Diggs, he kind of toted it all over. So let's see, he had 97 yards on 18 carries, averaged 5.5 a carry, and had a touchdown as well. The receiving core, like per usual, Malik Neighbors went off on us, had 6 catches for 89 yards. Kyron Lacey had 4 catches for 111 and a touchdown. It's just same year or different year, same story. Offensive line is just not up to par where it needs to be, not giving the quarterback enough time. Doesn't matter who's you got back there. You could have Joe Namath back there in the backfield. It doesn't matter. He's not having time to do anything. So I understand, some of the gripes about the quarterback is not all on the quarterback, but when the quarterback's got time and can't complete balls, it's really frustrating. But again, hats off to LSU. They executed about as perfect as you could. And man, Death Valley is a tough place to go in and play, especially at nighttime in a big time rivalry game like this. But hats off to LSU. They played really well. They're still in control of their destiny, SEC wise. I think they're out of the national championship picture. I really do. But SEC wise, technically they still control their destiny. But that defense, Auburn made one of the worst defenses in the country look like a top 5 defense, and that's what the most frustrating part was to me, honestly.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I really thought, especially what Auburn was able to do against Georgia and coming off the bye, I expected them to have more success against LSU's defense, the way they had been giving up yards and points. And, I thought one of the biggest things, though, was just Auburn could not get pressure on Jaden Daniels at all. I mean, he a lot of the time the ball was out, on time, on rhythm. And when LSU's playing offense like that, there's not really anybody that's gonna stop them or slow them down enough. I mean, they're gonna make some good defenses look pretty bad at times. I mean, this is one of the elite offenses in the country. So when they kind of came out and established things early and the way they were able to march down the field on the first drive and hit some big plays, it was like, Auburn, for them to really hang around this game, their defense really had to show up early and kind of get a few stops. And then, okay, maybe Auburn's offense can move the ball a little bit. But when they got down 17-0 quick, it was like, just you get out of your game plan that you want to play, and thought they did a good job. I mean, they got it. They cut to 20-10 at some point, or at one point. But as you mentioned, they just could never really sustain anything for any amount of time. And when you can't do that, you keep giving the ball to Jaden Daniels and the offense that they have. It's going to be a long night. But, yeah, I think Auburn's lack of pressure, kind of stopping the run game, but also putting pressure on him in the pass game, it just wasn't there. And, they were in a lot of comfortable, down in distances. They were able to hit some pretty big plays down the field. And, like I said, when you can't really get pressure on them and make him uncomfortable, they're going to pick you apart more often than not.
Yeah, it's just again, the biggest takeaway for me was I didn't think Auburn was going to win the game. I did think Auburn was going to keep it within the 11 because I thought they were going to be competitive just like they were against Georgia. But it blew me away with how bad Auburn looked coming off of the last game they played, taking the number 1 team down to the wire. So, I mean, other than that, I mean, it really speaks for itself. You can look at the final scoreboard, 48-18. Auburn gave up 563 yards. So, you're not going to win many ball games doing that. The strength of the team looked like the weakest part of the team on Saturday. The defense, and we've talked about the last few weeks when we talk about LSU, their offense is going to get theirs every time. No matter who they're playing, they're going to get theirs. They're going to put points up on the board. It's just if you can hang with them and you can answer with them. Kind of like the same way Missouri did last weekend. They were answering with them back and forth, and then ended up LSU just pulled away at the very, very end, but they were still answering with them and had a chance at the end of the ball game. But Auburn wasn't able to do that, and that's the frustrating part. It makes you scratch your head and just throw your hat around and just be in a piss poor mood the rest of the evening, because it's just they're better than that. We have seen Auburn play better than that this season, and then there's just games. It's just the inconsistency on the offensive side of the football. It's been the story of Auburn football the last 3 or 4 years, though. So it's nothing new. They're going to get better. Their recruiting cycle is working okay. They're getting some skill guys in there. They're strengthening the offensive line. They're strengthening the defensive front through the portal, or not through the portal, through the recruiting classes. So Auburn's going to be okay. We knew that we had to give Hugh Freeze time and let him, by about year 3, if this is still happening, then the all the stuff that the fans are saying about Hugh Freeze, all the negative things, then that's okay. I understand, and it's a little more. I can agree with it a little more in year 3 or 4. But right now, man, like I said, what he inherited, the ingredients he inherited is not the ingredients of making a championship dominant football team. It's just not. It's not the ingredients to win 9 to 10 games a year. So it's the ingredients of winning 6, 7 games a year, and that's what they're on par to do right now. So, we'll see how it shapes out, but just a very, very frustrating night, and there's nothing more you can say.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I kind of want to talk about another team that's a little inconsistent on the offensive side of the ball, and that's Alabama. I don't know about you. There may have been some people that were a little comfortable, or maybe Alabama fans that were a little comfortable with a 24-6 lead in this Arkansas game or in the second half. I never felt that way. Arkansas, give them a lot of credit. They haven't went away in any of the games they played this year. It's a 2-5 team, and they've lost, their 5 games by, 7, most of them 7 points or less. They took LSU down to the wire. They played Ole Miss tough. Obviously, came back in the second half and made it really interesting in Bryant Denny. But it was a little frustrating offensively. In the second quarter, kind of got things rolling. Hit some shot plays down the field, and just wasn't able to sustain any kind of success really. Came out early in the second half, ran the ball really well. Alabama mixed in a few extra running backs this week. You saw Jam Miller and Justice Haynes get a few more carries, and they did a pretty good job of rotating like all 4 of those guys in, and drove down the field with a run game early third quarter, and then it was just like the rest of the game, just completely abandoned the run game. I just didn't understand it. It felt like it had really got rolling after a really good second quarter, and then just kind of abandoned it after that first drive in the third quarter. And obviously, Jalen Milroe was very, very inconsistent in the second half. Hit some plays, in the second quarter, but in the second half, missed a few throws that would have extended some drives. Third and long still been a big issue for Alabama, being behind the chains more often than not. Because as we talked about a bunch, if they stay behind the chains and they're in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 plus consistently, they're not going to be a very successful offense. I think their average third down this year is 3rd and 8. And even though they had some success with in the second quarter, but they're not going to be able to sustain it for 4 quarters or multiple games. And I just really hated abandoning the run game and kind of staying ahead of the chains, especially when it was really working. They're kind of late first half, early second half. But and one other issue for me is I don't know if they're really drilling it in Jalen Milroe's head to kind of stay in the pocket or – but I feel like the last few games, his legs have just been non-existent. No quarterback runs. It's just like you're taking one of his biggest assets and you're not even using it. So I just don't understand. I don't know if they're just drilling it to him like, hey, you got to stay in the pocket a little bit longer, try to make plays downfield, which they've had some success doing. But it just feels like you're kind of putting handcuffs on him a little bit and not letting him use one of the biggest assets that he has, and that's his athleticism and in the run game. So I'm hoping to see that a little bit more. I want to see some more outside zone runs when we got the backs out on the perimeter. I thought we had a lot more success. I'd like to see that sprinkled in a little bit more too, um, but this offense right now is prone to go on scoring droughts. We've seen it multiple times, and obviously it happened in the second half. And when you go 3 and out, 3 or 4 straight possessions, you're going to let a team like Arkansas or any SEC team get right back in the game because your defense is going to wear down in the second half, and you saw that when you went multiple 3 and outs in a row, kept Arkansas's offense on the field. They got a couple. Alabama got a couple third down penalties that extended a drive or two, and then before you know it, it goes from 24-6 to 24-21. So hopefully they can get it corrected and get a little bit more consistency on offense. But I tell you what, they're facing a really good Tennessee pass rush this week. That defensive line, what Tennessee's done on the defensive side of the ball, and we'll talk about it in a little bit with their game against A&M. But I'm just thoroughly impressed, and they're third in the country in sacks. And I'll be honest, I don't think it matters who Alabama's plays right now. They're gonna get sacked 4 or 5 times. Like you can just pretty much mark it down, like mark them down for about 4 sacks. Because whether it's holding the ball too long or Caden Proctor just getting absolutely blown by, and it's not just him; it's Sam McLaughlin and a couple other guys. But it was funny. My brother was actually at the game Saturday, and I texted him. I said, "Does Caden Proctor look as slow at field level as he does on TV? Because his feet look like cement blocks. I mean, just." He cannot handle a speed rusher whatsoever. I mean, they are just burning him. And I think he's going to be a good player. He's a true freshman, but he's just been a little in over his head so far. But hopefully they can get that corrected where they can establish the run game a little bit more, maybe be able to stick with it, and also, not be able to take so many sacks and get in those third and longs that have been, that are so hard to convert. So I'm nervous about this Tennessee matchup for the way they've kind of transformed their defense, especially on the line of scrimmage, and same with their offensive line. So it's going to be a tough matchup Saturday, but hopefully Alabama will use this a little bit as a learning experience, be able to we got to put teams away, when we have the opportunity, and continue to move the ball down the field. But give Arkansas credit though. We knew they weren't going to go away. They haven't done that all year. That's not their DNA. And probably never will be under Sam Pittman. So give them credit for hanging in. And I also want to give them credit too because they've been away from Fayetteville 4 straight weeks in a row. Yeah. They've had 3 road games, the neutral game in Dallas against A&M. So that shouldn't happen either. There's no way you should go on the road 4 straight weeks in the SEC, but that's the way it fell. And I want to give them credit for how hard they played and hanging in the game.
Yeah, every time we've talked about Arkansas this year, we've said they're never out of it. They're in every single game down to the last few minutes. Even though, like you said, they've lost a couple of 1-possession games here this season, especially back to back. But they're in every single game. I didn't expect them to roll over when they were down 3 possessions or whatever, and they. I went outside. I was at a buddy's house. I went outside. I was playing some cornhole, came back in, and I was like, oh, Lord, it's 27-14. And then it was – or 24-14. It was 24-21. It's like, oh, no. Arkansas might shock the world here. I know them Alabama fans was, trembling on the edge of their seats. But Arkansas is in every single game. You kind of feel bad for them because it's at some point you're like, man, I just wish we were getting blown out. I wish we were just not the better team. But clearly – we're in every game. We have a chance to win every game. We just can't finish, can't get it done. And that's the biggest takeaway from Arkansas this year is, man, they're in it at the end of every single game. They just can't quite find a way to finish it out. So you understand that. And you hate to see it for the Arkansas side, but like you said, understand Pittman, they're not ever going to die. They're never going to roll over. But like you said about Alabama's offense, it's like the first half, you're like, man, Milroe, he's finding his way in. He's found his identity here in this offense. He hit a couple of deep balls in the first half. It's like, all right, he's on his way to becoming the quarterback, everybody's expecting him to be. And then in the second half, it's kind of like it just fell off, wasn't super consistent. I mean, he only completed 10 passes, but he had 230 something yards passing. I mean, those two deep balls definitely padded the stat book there. But in the second half, it's like, man couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat, it seemed like. It's just, like you said, it's just the inconsistency, the going away from the run game when it's working. But all in all, they got a win. They came away with a win. So you can't be upset about that. But this weekend against Tennessee, because like you said, their defense, number 3 in the nation in sacks. They just played Texas A&M really physical. It was a really physical football game, low-scoring football game. Took the under in that, cashed it, by the way. But, yeah, it was, big-time physical game, just what you expect to see in the SEC. One of the most fun games I've seen all year. I did think A&M was going to find a way to win that game, but Tennessee they were the better team. They were the more physical team. They were more consistent, in my opinion, and I believe that their coach managed the game a lot better than Jimbo did. Jimbo's had some blunders this year for sure.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. I was like you. I took the under in this game. I just felt like it was set up for a low scoring type of game. I mean, we've talked about especially both of these defensive lines. I mean, nobody's really been able to run the ball on Texas A&M this year. I mean, we know what Tyler Van Dyke did through the air. Alabama um, really didn't run the ball on them either. They hit some plays through the air when they needed to, but um, really the stat of the game for me is Tennessee's rushing offense. I mean, Jalen Wright, 19 carries, 136 yards. They ran for 232 yards against this A&M front that
On
nobody's even
49
come.
carries.
Yeah, nobody's even come close to having this kind of success against their defensive front. So I feel like for the people that haven't really watched this Tennessee team much this year and they just kind of look at some of the scores or just have it in their mind of Hendon Hooker and them high flying, throwing the ball down the field, like that is not them at all. Like this is a totally different Tennessee offense. I mean, this is a run first offense. I mean, they went from what you saw a year ago. They're last in the SEC in explosive pass plays. Like, who would have thought that? Like, if somebody would have told you before week 1, and they go, it's mid to late October, and Tennessee is last in the SEC in explosive pass plays, you'd be like, there's no way. Like,
Especially with Joe Milton at the helm with his rocket arm he's got.
yeah, I mean, nobody would ever guess that. So I mean, he's not really the focal point of this offense. I mean, like I said, he hasn't connected on a ton of throws down the field. I mean, that's just not their strength. They're really leaning on this run game, and obviously had great success against A&M, probably more so than everybody else combined against them this year as far as on the ground, pretty much. So, and then on the defensive side, their defensive front just had Max Johnson running for his life all day long. I mean, it was every pass I felt like Max Johnson threw. He was leaning back on his back foot, pedaling back in the pocket. I mean, it was almost every down, it seemed like. They were able to force a couple interceptions late in the game to kind of help them seal it. But yeah, this really had the makings of a low scoring, physical type of game, the way both these teams, styles are this year. And that's exactly what we got. And hats off to Tennessee. They made a few more plays and were able to control the line of scrimmage more than A&M was.
Yeah, it was the number 1 rushing defense in A&M versus the number 1 rushing offense in Tennessee. Tennessee, they bested them. They got the better of them, and I thought it was one of the most impressive games I've seen offensive wise when it came to Tennessee. I mean, they just did not go away from their game plan. Their game plan was give it to Jalen Wright and let him work. I mean, the dude, like you said, ran it 19 times for 136 yards, had more than half their rushing yards, averaged 7.2 a pop. That's tough to stop. I don't care what defense you are. That's tough to stop if your guy's averaging 7 yards a carry. I mean, they average 4.5 or a little over 4.5 per carry as a team. So you just hand it off 3 times. That's a first down right there if you're hitting average. So, I mean, I was really impressed with Tennessee. I don't think they're going to go away from that game plan against Alabama. I think Alabama's going to be more poised to take on this game plan. We keep bragging on Kevin Steele and that defense and what they're able to do, how physical and relentless they are. 5 to 6 hats on the football every time, wherever the football is. There's 5, 6 crimson hats on it. So I'm excited to see this matchup this weekend. A little revenge tactic on Alabama's side. It is at home for Bama, so that's a big. It's going to lean them a little bit, I believe. But I'm excited to see how this game matches out because Alabama hasn't necessarily been ran all over this year, but you can go ahead and guarantee that that's what Tennessee is going to try to do. They're going to try to establish the game and then let the throws come, let the passes come where they may, but they're going to rely on this run game. They're going to rely on Jalen Wright and Jabari Small. That's their offense, and they're going to stick to it 100%. And I'm so excited to see how this game is going to shape out this weekend. This is probably going to be my most favorite game, most look forward to game this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great matchup. And I want to say this too about Tennessee, and I think what helps their run game so much is, and even last year they didn't run the ball a ton, but they were effective doing it, to kind of set up their pass game really. And when them running the ball out of the spread formation, we've talked about how wide to the boundary that they line their receivers up. So obviously, I mean, even if they're not an explosive passing offense this year, you still have to respect it. Obviously, you still have to put bodies out there. And I think getting your receiver so far to the boundary, it just opens up so much more space and limits the amount of guys they can put in the box, So it's like, I feel like you get a lot of like one-on-one matchups where their offensive linemen kind of go into the second level, because you're not able to have as many guys like condensed in the box as you would want to, against a typical offense. So I feel like their scheme kind of opens up some more running lanes for them and makes it a little bit easier, even when they're not, having great success throwing it down the field. Just the way they're spaced just limits the amount of people you can have in the box and helps them kind of get that run game going. So I feel like both things kind of play off each other. And then, like you said with Alabama, I do think they'll be better adept to stop this run game. But the main thing for them is the offense, extending possessions. You don't want to go 3 or 4 3-and-outs like you did Saturday, and you keep Tennessee's offense on the field. You keep your defense on the field longer. I think it's just like this A&M game. I think it's a recipe for a low-scoring type of game. I mean, Alabama's offense is not pulling away from anybody right now. I mean, they're probably going to be in several close games down the stretch, and really that's not a big surprise. I mean, going into the year, I mean, did we not? I mean, we said for preseason first couple of weeks, like, hey, the style they are playing this year is a low margin for error type of football.
Yeah.
So like they're not. I still think they can be a pretty good offense or a pretty effective offense, but they're still not. It's not going to be the type that they're going to really pull away from you. You know what I mean? They're still going to win games more with their defense, playing complementary football, hopefully not turn the ball over too much. But like I said, it's not an offense that's going to pull away from you. So I think it's a recipe for another low-scoring type of game. I think it's pretty similar to what you saw with Tennessee A&M, maybe slightly higher scoring than that. But I still think it's a game that's probably in the 20s. Probably. You probably want to score. I mean, you'd love to get to the 30s, certainly, to feel comfortable, but it's probably a game that's going to be in the 20s, to be honest with you. So I'm looking forward to the matchup. Their defensive front, it scares me. I mean, they're third in the country in sacks. So I'm pretty much penciling them in for about 4 or 5 sacks, to be honest with you. But hopefully Alabama can convert enough third downs and hopefully not get too many killer sacks that it kills a bunch of drives. But it's going to be a heck of a challenge. I'll lean Alabama slightly with it being in Bryant Denny. I think they make enough plays, but um, it's going to be a really tight ball game. It's going to be fun to watch for sure. It's going to be hard hitting and physical.
Absolutely. A game I want to talk about kind of really upset me this weekend because it's not looking great for my futures bet. Florida and South Carolina. South Carolina had this game won. And in the last few minutes, Florida just kept on knocking at that door and they finally knocked it in. I feel so bad for Spencer Rattler because South Carolina is wasting a generational talent at quarterback. I mean, the dude had 313 yards and 4 touchdowns. I don't know what more you can ask him to do on top of 50 rushing or 46 rushing yards. I really don't know what more you can ask Spencer Rattler to do. He is doing all he can basically with nobody blocking for him. I mean, he's got just as good a chance of completing all these passes and playing the exact same level he's playing at with nobody blocking for him. You could have no offensive lineman out there. It's going to be the exact same. And they led this game for majority of the time until the very, very end. I mean, they were up 24 and ended up just letting Florida chip away. They did win the fourth quarter, but it just wasn't quite enough. Graham Mertz threw for 423 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, we talked about Graham Mertz, mainly me talking about, he's a handoff specialist coming from Wisconsin. But, man, has he proved me wrong. The dude is balling out this year. He's got some of the best stats in the SEC when it comes to quarterback play. He's led them to 5 wins now. They're 5-2. I got the under 5.5, so I need them to start, losing. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think they finally found their stride. Man, like I said, they just kept knocking at that door. They just wouldn't go away. They couldn't quite get a big enough. South Carolina couldn't quite get a big enough lead to pull away from them. And yeah, Shane Beamer at the end of the game was, visibly just annoyed. You could tell by the way he looked, by the way he was talking. He said there were some pressures that were called, that the DBs were supposed to, blitz the quarterback, and that they stopped like halfway. They just quit blitzing. They quit going on the pressure. One time they caught a pressure. They just didn't run the pressure at all. So you could tell he was very, very annoyed with it. There were some people that thought that Shane Beamer was putting all the blame on other people and not himself. I don't think he was doing that. I think he was just answering the question truthfully when asked, what's the problem? And he was saying, we called this, we did this, and the players didn't execute. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. I don't feel like he was throwing anybody under the bus. I feel like he was just answering it truthfully. And it's in the heat of the moment, your emotions are going. You might say some things in a way you shouldn't say them, or a way you're going to regret saying. But I'm with them 100%. They should have won this game. They had every chance to win this game, and they just let it slip away. But, hats off to Graham Mertz and the Florida Gators for just chipping away. And they did not go down easily. They had a total of 495 yards, and 423 of those came through the air. They couldn't really quite run the ball, but they're leaning on Graham Mertz, and he is coming through. The handoff specialist himself is tossing the rock around, proving me wrong.
I just want to say, if there's any Florida fans out there, if I knew somebody that could make me a quick T-shirt, I would get Gunslinging Graham Mertz a T-shirt, man. Mertz throwing for 4 and change, man. That is crazy. 30 of 48, 423, 3 touchdowns. You mentioned they didn't really run the ball that great. Only 83 yards on the ground. On a team that wants to be a run first offense and lean on that side of their game. But man, it was really fun to see. As you mentioned, this is a super entertaining game. Spencer Rattler, as you said, has just been outstanding this year. It's crazy they're 2-4. And they've got some really tough games, still left ahead too. So it's going to be tough sledding here on out for South Carolina as well. But he's playing at such a high level right now. We talked about their wideouts and how much talent they have on the outside, and that's continued to kind of show itself. And they actually had pretty good success running the ball. They doubled up Florida in rushing. So And as you mentioned, they were up 10, pretty late in the fourth quarter and just kind of let it slip away. So, they kind of had it right there for the taking, but weren't able to close the deal. And this is a Florida team too that struggled mightily on the road. I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons I took South Carolina in this game, just for that fact of, and plus they were coming off a bye, but Florida's been, on the road at Utah, which it was the first game of the season, but just looked sloppy and just did not play well at all. And then just got absolutely massacred at Kentucky a couple weeks ago. So, and then Billy Napier, I think, only has one road win in 2 years at Florida. Now he's got two. So it's just a team that had not played well on the road at all. So I was like, until I see it, it's hard for me to go with them here. But give them credit, man. They just kind of kept battling. As you mentioned, they were down for most of the game and down in the fourth, and they just kind of kept battling, and they leaned on Graham Mertz. And I just want to say Ricky Pearsall, man, that dude is an absolute ball player, man. 10 receptions, 166 yards. He keeps coming up big for this Florida team. And they've got some other good, young weapons, I think, that are emerging. Eugene Wilson, the freshman wide receiver, he's kind of coming to his own. I think he's going to be a good player going forward for them. So, I feel like they're a little bit better receiver than maybe I expected, getting some contributions from guys, maybe that weren't very well known before, but give them credit, man. They battled, hung in there, and got a huge road win. And all of a sudden they're sitting at 5-2, after a couple ugly showings. But I feel like they're feeling pretty good to be 5-2 at this point.
Absolutely. And how about old Drink taking down Kentucky? I mean, they were down early, down 14-0 early, came back and they won the game 38-21. Didn't really have the best showing at the quarterback position. Brady Cook didn't have his usual 300-yard passing game or whatever we've been so accustomed to seeing. He had 167 yards and threw a touchdown. They ran the ball okay. Cody Schrader had 20 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown. And Brady Cook also took one in for a touchdown, 10 carries for 40 yards. Ran the ball for 118 yards. But I feel like Kentucky, man, they couldn't get anything going. I mean, they ran the ball pretty well with Ray Davis. He had 128 yards, but they could never find the end zone, man. After that second touchdown, and I believe it was the first quarter, maybe the start of the second quarter, Devin Leary ran it in. They couldn't find it, the end zone, man. It's like they were lost out there on the offensive side of the ball. Turned the ball over quite often, had 2 interceptions. I tell you what, Peyton Thorne's been somewhat of a letdown this year. I mean, nobody expected him to be, Johnny Unitas out there, but Devin Leary came in expecting to get this Kentucky team back on track with what they were 2 years ago, winning 10 games. And he's just been probably one of the biggest letdowns in college football this year. He has not lived up to the hype at all. I mean, from what he was at NC State to what he is now, he is a completely different 180 quarterback in the worst way possible.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I picked Kentucky in this game, and
Me too.
When they jumped out, 14-0, I was like, man, this is going to be a Kentucky bounce back performance, kind of like I expected. I mean, didn't think they would necessarily blow them out from that point on, but I was like, okay, Kentucky looking more like themselves, coming off the Georgia game and got away from them, and I'm like, okay, they're going to kind of bounce back and get back on track, so to speak. And after that, man, Missouri's defense just, man, they stepped up big time. As you mentioned, they forced 2 interceptions, 3 turnovers overall, especially in the second half when they needed some stops to get the ball back to their offense. They were able to do that. They scored some points off turnovers, was a big factor in this game. But yeah, Missouri's defense for the final 3 quarters was outstanding. Ray Davis got going early and overall had a pretty good stat line, but a lot of the damage felt like it was early in the game. And yeah, just credit to Missouri for responding, man. I mean, their defense was huge. Their offense obviously took advantage of those turnovers, and Drink, man, got a huge road win. I mean, I did not expect them to win in that kind of fashion. And as you mentioned with Devin Leary, yeah, I definitely expected a lot more out of him. I feel like, especially the last few weeks, I know they didn't get off to, great, they haven't been a great offensive team, but I just feel like the last few weeks, especially the turnovers have ticked up a lot, and he hasn't been quite as effective as I thought he would be because they've got really good weapons around him. I mean, we know about Ray Davis and what kind of back he is, but we've been very high on those receivers: Barry Brown, Dane Key, Travion Robinson. I mean, he's got a good cast of weapons to throw to, and you look at his stat line, hasn't been terrible. I think he's at 14 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, but for a guy that just didn't turn the ball over very much, at NC State, like he was known like this is a guy that protects the football. We're 7 games in, he's got 7 interceptions, so just hasn't been as effective as I thought he would be so far. We'll see if he kind of turns it around a little bit down the stretch run. They're still 5-2, a lot to play for them, but they got really tough back half of the schedule. They got Tennessee in 2 weeks, at Mississippi State, Alabama, at South Carolina, and then at Louisville. So pretty tough, stretch the last month and a half. So, but I want to see if he can kind of bounce back a little bit from the last several weeks.
Absolutely. And one of my buddies, Blake Mays, I played college ball with him. He sent me a tweet today. It's from the College Football Report. And this is, they tweeted a chaotic, hypothetical college football playoff race. A 12-1 Georgia, who loses in the SEC championship game. 11-1 Ohio State, whose only loss is to Penn State. And 11-1 Michigan, whose only loss is to Ohio State. And 11-1 Penn State, whose only loss is to Michigan. The Big Ten tiebreaker controversy there. And you got a 12-1 Alabama, who's the SEC champion. A 12-1 Texas, who's the Big 12 champion. A 12-1 Oklahoma, whose only loss is to Texas in the Big 12 championship. A 12-1 Oregon, who's the Pac-12 champion. A 12-1 Washington, whose only loss will be to Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. A 12-1 North Carolina, who only loss will be to Clemson, and they will be the ACC champion. And a 12-1 FSU, whose only loss will be to North Carolina. This is a very, very possible outcome for this season. There could be 11 one-loss teams, all with the loss to a champion, or they lose in the championship game. Now, the odds of that happening where all these 12 teams come out to only lose one game, probably not very high. But there is a big possibility that this could happen. And if that were to happen, that would be one of the craziest stories in college football history. What do you think would be the case if that were to happen at the end of the year? There's 12 one-loss teams.
Go ahead and implement the 12-team playoff 1 year early and let them roll with it, man. But no, that would be crazy. I mean, like you said, odds are it's probably not going to happen, but I mean, I think it's very real. You could have, 6, 7, 8 that are one loss, that are worthy, So, I doubt it'll be 11, one loss of that caliber, but would not be shocked at all if it's not 6 or 7. I think regardless of how it shakes out, you're going to have some real debates this year about like who's in those final, that number 3 spot, or that number 4 spot. Like, we've had some pretty big debates in the past, about, a one loss, non-conference champ or whatnot. But I think you're going to have some really heated, like down to the wire type of debates this year. It feels like the stage is set for it. I mean, that scenario, regardless of who the SEC champ is, the SEC champion's got to be in there. I mean, I think a one-loss SEC champ's a lock, regardless if that's Georgia or Alabama or whoever. Man, I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, man, that's what's crazy about the Big Ten, and what I'm curious to see is you've got 3 kind of juggernauts, if you will, up there, at least what people think. You're getting one edition of that this Saturday. I'm super excited to see this game, Penn State at Ohio State.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be a lot of fun. But, yeah, you've got a very real scenario up there, and this is actually pretty possible where you could have all of those teams, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, with one loss all to each other. Like that I could definitely see happening. I don't know how you settle that. I mean, obviously they would have a tiebreaker scenario. One of those teams would go to the Big Ten title game. Obviously, if that team were to win, they would be, they would obviously have to be in the playoffs. So, but as far as the other two, man, I don't. It would be tough to sell that. You just have to see what the results end up being down the stretch. But I can't even say right now because I don't know what all the results will be and what the team's looking like at the time and all that. But you're right, though. I mean, it's a very real scenario. May not be 11 or 12, but we could have 6, 7, 8 that are in that kind of same category. That's why we're saying, man, stay tuned. It's gonna be a while down the stretch. I mean, it's gonna be super entertaining. I think it's setting up for one of the most fun finishes, fun seasons of college football that we can remember, honestly.
Absolutely. The game I want to talk about, it's probably the biggest game this past weekend, was Washington and Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
This was the worst game management I've seen in quite some time. Dan Lanning outcoached himself. He got in his way several times in this ball game. I get you want to be aggressive, but there's times to be aggressive and there's times to not be aggressive. The score was 22-18 right before half. Oregon was on the 4 or 5 yard line, maybe 2 or 3 yard line, whatever. It was fourth down. Seconds before half. Oregon and Washington got the ball to start the game. So Oregon's going to get the ball back after halftime. They kick the field goal. They cut it to a 1-point game. And they get the ball back. However, they decide to go for it. They don't get it. They go to half down 3. They come out of half. I believe it was the first or second possession. I can't remember exactly which one it was. They had a chance to kick a field goal again. They did not kick the field goal. Then they're down 2 possessions. They end up coming all the way back, and they take the lead 33-28, whatever the score was at the time. They're on the 50-yard line with 1:18 to go. Fourth down, and they don't punt the ball. They decide to go for it on fourth down and a chance of giving the ball back to one of the best college football quarterbacks this season and a guy that they ain't been able to stop all day at the 50-yard line to potentially lose this game. And they decide to go for it again. Don't get it. Michael Penix Jr. and Washington Huskies marching down the field, throw a little back shoulder touchdown in the back corner of the end zone. Beautiful ball, by the way. And they end up taking the lead and won the game. I get being aggressive. Maybe the one right before halftime, the one right after halftime even. But when you're on the 50-yard line with the game in hand, punt the freaking football. What are you doing giving the opposing team the ball on the 50-yard line? I mean, this was Dan Lanning got in his own way so many times this past Saturday when he had a chance to seal the victory. And it blew me away. Obviously, I had Oregon minus 2.5, so it didn't even push. I lost the freaking bet. It was just it was frustrating to watch as a fan. I know it was really frustrating to watch. But what were your takeaways on this? Because of all the coaches to get in their way, this is like a Gus Malzahn type deal. Like, what was Dan Lanning thinking? I get it. Again, you can be aggressive, but at certain times in the game, there's a time to manage the football game and get yourself a win and be aggressive. And he chose the latter multiple times, and it came back to bite him in the rear end multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, the one I really disagree with, honestly, as you referenced right before halftime, they were down 4, getting the ball after half. I think I'm trying to look and see where they were at. Okay, they're on the 3. They're on the 3-yard line. Right there, I would have kicked that. Obviously, I mean, cut it to a 1-point game. Like, I mean, it's basically even. You're getting the ball after half. That one to me was, believe it or not, that was probably the most mind numbing when I felt like. I mean, yeah, I know you're on the 3, and obviously, if it works, it looks like a great call. But it just the risk really was too, it was too big for, reward, I guess you could say. Like, I mean, cut it to a 1-point game there. you kind of get a little bit of momentum going in the locker room. Like, hey, you're down one. It's basically an even game. You get the ball after half. Like, you're on the road, like hostile environment. I mean, it was jumping up there. So, yeah, to me, that was the one I probably disagree with the most. I'm like you two at the end of the game. It's kind of, I think a lot of other coaches would have done it too because it was like you're down. I kind of get why he did in a way because it's like they get that one play, game's over. I mean, they literally could have ran the clock out. But at the same time, like you said, the risk again was so big that like, man, if you don't get, it's like 4th and 3. If
Yeah.
it's like 4th and half a yard or something, okay. I could kind of, you can make a strong case. But with it being 4th and 3, it's like, man, if you don't get it, you're giving Michael Penix and this elite group wide, and they got some dudes at wide
Oh, yeah.
receiver that I don't think many people in the country know about. But man, you give them a short field, and man, it was boom, 3-4 plays, they're in the end zone,
Yeah.
and then it's you still got a shot there, but you really put yourself in a bind. So yeah, I thought he was way too aggressive at times. Honestly, I mean, I will give him credit. He stuck to his guns. He said they were going to be aggressive for better or for worse. They were, and obviously came out on the wrong side of things. But you know,
In a game
it,
like that, though, you got to take the points when they're given to you. And they
yeah,
left 6 points on the field. And you take those 6 points, you win the freaking football game. You don't have to kick it at the end to try and tie it and go to overtime. You just win the football game outright.
yeah, exactly. I think the decisions I had the biggest problem with were leaving the points on the field. I feel
Yes.
like because I feel like I
He wasn't down
understood it.
3 possessions.
Yeah, I understood the one at midfield, even though it was really gutsy, and I probably wouldn't have done it myself, but I could kind of understand it because it's like, okay, if you don't really trust your defense and you're like, okay, they've still got about 2 minutes left, but it's like, man, if we get this one play, I mean, it's game over. So I could make a case to see that, but leaving the points on the field, especially early in the ball game, I just did not get that when it didn't seem like a high probability of getting a touchdown there.
No. Like I get,
I really didn't like the play call before half
no.
either. So it was
Like
just
your quarterback's confident and he wants to go for it. I get it, but you're the freaking head coach. You make the call. You don't let your players make the call for you. You're the guy. You make the call. Take the points. It's like I get if he was playing from behind all game, but he was in it. You in a game like that, you can't take we can't field goals ain't going to win it. Blah blah blah. That's the old saying: field goals aren't going to beat 7 points. Obviously not, but they were in the game and they were still able to score points. They were putting it in the end zone. But at that point, at that moment right there, knowing you're about to get the ball back, kick the field goal. Now, if Washington would have got the ball after half, I can maybe see a case and understand why he did it a little more. But I have no understanding of why he did not kick the field goal before half, and then why he didn't kick. I think it was the second drive after half. Why he didn't kick the field goal there? Because, like I said, in these types of games, basically you're playing for the championship or to be undefeated in your conference. You've got to take the points when they're given to you because they don't come often. They don't come easy. Take them when you can get them, so you don't have to go kick a game winning field goal or a game time field goal at the end and lose and break your heart. Like he outcoached himself 1,000%.
yeah. I'm really hoping this is the OU Texas situation. I would love to.
I think it's going to be.
I hope we get a rematch in both those games. Honestly, I feel like, and I want to talk a little bit about this too. The thing I felt most confident in this week is Notre Dame beating USC.
Oh yeah.
I do not think USC's done losing in the Pac-12. Don't want to say like by no means is it a lock for both these teams to make the Pac-12 title game. I mean, they're certainly the favorites too, but you can't count out Utah. Like Oregon State's playing good ball, UCLA's playing pretty good ball. So the Pac-12 is very competitive. So by no means is it a sure thing we'll get both these teams again. But I am hopeful we get both these teams again because I'd love to see a rematch of this Friday night championship, weekend for the Pac-12, and I'd love to see Texas and OU again. This was definitely one of the better games of the year. So hopefully we'll get that again. But Pac-12 is playing really good ball right now and got a lot of competitive teams. So it's a long way to go out there. But we want to talk about USC a little bit. Man, Caleb Williams, rough night for him in South Bend. The only thing I regret this weekend is not putting more money on Notre Dame. I was felt
Yeah.
so good about this game. I put about 20 or so, 20 plus on it a little bit, and I was so close. I mean, I felt really good about it, but it's always in the back of your mind that off chance that it could go sideways. It does happen. We have some we feel
Quite
really good
often.
about, and they go the wrong way. So I'm like, man, I mean, I was like 95% sure. I was like, man, I need to stick a little bit more on this because I did feel great about it. I was like, Notre Dame is going to win this game by 2.5 or 3, whatever. Actually, I took them at 2.5 earlier in the week, and it went to 3 on my sports book, like pretty close to game time. So I was like, man, I was hoping the 2.5 would still be there. And I definitely would have took it if it was, but the 3 kind of like, man, I'll just leave it. I already got about 20 or so on them. But man, I'm regretting it now, but I'm glad we won what we did on them. Just felt like it was the right spot for Notre Dame to have a bounce back game. I know they've lost 2 games, but this is still a really good Notre Dame team.
Oh yeah.
USC just was ripe for the picking. It felt like that defense has just played so poorly. And then obviously they turned the ball over. I mean, they got pretty much dominated, honestly. And I don't see them turning around that defense. I think this season they're going to lose a few more games, and Lincoln Riley's going to be forced to make some kind of changes on defense, dude. Alex Grinch is not it. I mean,
No.
I mean, Alex Grinch is the Grinch that stole defense from any team that he's coaching, dude. Dude is I don't know if it's him's bad or it's just I don't know if Lincoln just does not care about defense. I don't know, but
He ain't
changes are
never
going
seemed
to
like
have.
he has, no matter where he's been.
Yeah, it's like their defense bad, special teams bad. Like their only defense is score more points. I mean, I don't know. They're going to be forced. Lincoln Riley's going to be forced to make some kind of changes to improve this because he's never going to be at a national championship level unless he gets a better defense. It doesn't
Right.
even have to be elite necessarily. It just can't be horrible. And it is just downright disgusting, honestly.
Oh yeah.
So he's going to have to make changes. He's going to be forced to, just because the results have not been there his entire coaching career, and he's never going to get over that hump unless he can improve it. So we'll see, but I don't think USC's done losing out there.
I
I
think they have
thought,
a chance to lose to Arizona in a few weeks. I think they play Arizona in 2 weeks. I think they have a chance. I mean, Arizona absolutely wiped the floor with Washington State this weekend, beat them 44-6, and they were a 7.5 point underdog. There's that Washington. I mean, that Arizona team, their quarterback is legit. They found their guy, and if USC is not careful, it can be a shootout with Arizona for sure, 100%.
well, you look at USC, excuse me, they're scheduled the rest of the way. Utah at home this Saturday, at
Tough.
Cal, Washington at home, at Oregon, and then UCLA. So I mean, any of those teams could beat them with their defense the way it's been playing. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, I don't think they'll lose all those games, but there's not a gimme game on any of those. And we've talked about, you know, for most of this season how backloaded their schedule was. Like, I mean, they had 5 or 6 gimmies really to start the season. So this is the tough part of their schedule, coming off a blowout loss at Notre Dame. So there's no gimmies or there's no easy ones the rest of the way for them. So
I was wrong. I clicked the wrong thing. They already played Arizona. That's on me. Arizona about got them though. They took
no,
them
they
to
did. No,
overtime.
that Arizona team. I know the record says 4-3, but that's a pretty good Arizona team, man.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they played Mississippi State close in Starkville. No, that's a really solid Arizona team. They're probably gonna pick 1 or 2 off before the season's done.
Absolutely. You got anything else you want to cover?
Well, kind of looking ahead, I do want to get your thoughts on this Auburn Ole Miss game. Obviously, one of the bigger, remaining regular season games for Auburn. I mean, obviously at Jordan Hare, you got Mississippi State after that. Kind of what are you expecting? Do you think Auburn's offense will be able to bounce back a little bit at home? I mean, I feel like this game is always, it's always super competitive game. Always feels like it comes down kind of towards the end. Obviously, it's always been a tough place to play for Ole Miss. I feel like, and really for anybody in the SEC. But kind of, what are you expecting this week? Do you think Auburn can kind of get their offense a little bit more back in gear?
Man, I hope so. I thought they would get it back in gear against one of the worst defenses in the SEC, and I was 1,000% wrong. Ole Miss's offense, like they're kind of like LSU's offense, they're going to get theirs. Auburn's defense, has been the high point of the year. I think there's a chance that Auburn, plays them close. But if I'm being honest, I think Ole Miss is going to win. Ole Miss is a 6.5-point favorite right now. It is at Auburn under the lights, 6 o'clock kickoff. I think it's going to be a better game than what Auburn played this past weekend. But I do think that Ole Miss is going to end up taking away the victory in this game just because, man, Auburn's offense just looks so lost. It's so inconsistent. Maybe they can have another showing of like they did against Georgia, excuse me. Being at home, it's a big it definitely helps for sure in that environment. I really, really hope that the offense it finds something to do. Hugh Freeze said they're still going to go with the two quarterback system. There's not going to be any personnel changes on the offense. It's going to look the same. So, with that being said, I really don't know how much more you can look for. You just hope that they can find something to be competent in. Ole Miss's defense is not, showstoppers by any means, but man, that offense, they can put up points and they can move it down the field. And we saw what they did to LSU. If I'm being honest with myself, I think Ole Miss wins this game. They go 6-1, and Auburn falls to 3-4. I hope they can prove me wrong, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think too, like the way LSU was able to run the ball a little bit too, obviously got to give you some concerns, Quinton Judkins, and like you said, the way Jackson Dart's playing too. I mean, he's playing at an extremely high level right now. So, yeah, I mean, this is a game where Ole Miss is going to kind of get their points. You feel like, but Auburn's just got to have some success, especially early, man. Like that is so key for Auburn being at Jordan Hare, getting off to a good start and keeping that crowd in the game for 4 quarters. Like if they can do that, they always have a legit chance to win it in the second half. But it's so key to get off to a fast starter, at least have some success and move the ball early. Hopefully get some points on some early drives and kind of force Ole Miss to match you a little bit. Kind of like the Georgia game. Auburn had some success early. Their defense hung in, and then all of a sudden you look up, late third quarter, fourth quarter, and it's a game. So the key is for them they gotta get off to a good start, keep the crowd in it for 60 minutes, and I think they'll have a chance. But I feel like too though, Ole Miss always has this game there's a game during a season where they just kind of I don't know whether you say drop one or just kind of just don't play very good ball. I think Auburn's going to come out hungry though. I mean, they've lost 3 straight. They're going to be hungry and desperate to get back on the winning track, being back at home. So I'm expecting a pretty good ball game, honestly. I'm like you though. I do think Ole Miss finds a way to win it, but I do think it's going to be competitive. I do think Auburn will have a little bit more success and get off to a better start and hang in there for a little while. But going to be interesting to see. Obviously, the Alabama-Tennessee game, as you mentioned earlier, is going to be one of the games of the week, in the country, not just the SEC. So we're excited to see that matchup. And I think Arkansas gets back on track this week and gets them a win. They're hosting Mississippi State at home. First time they're in Fayetteville and, 4 games, which, like I said, is complete scheduling malpractice. Not their fault, the league's fault, by the way. Yeah. But they should not have to be on the road for 4 straight weeks. But I'm sure they are super glad to be back in Fayetteville this week. I think they bounce back and close the deal and get a much needed win for them because they've been playing tough. They've been playing, gritty. They're due for a win. I think they'll get it this weekend.
Absolutely. Like we said, Arkansas, they're a scrappy bunch, and they aren't going to lay down no matter if they lose no game or win no games or win all games. They're going to be in the fight, and they're going to be in the game till the last whistle blows. So I think that they're going to get the better of Mississippi State for sure. Mississippi State's kind of scrambling right now, and their offense, they haven't quite found an identity yet. They are coming off a bye week, so that's in their favor. But I think Arkansas gets it done this weekend for the first time in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. It's hard to believe we're going into week 8, man. It's crazy how fast the season goes by. But as mentioned before, we got a lot ahead, a lot of crazy, exciting matchups to look forward to. It's gonna be a thrill down the stretch, no doubt about it. As you kind of laid out that potential playoff scenario, there's no telling what twists and turns are going to kind of come our way here as we get into late October into November. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe if you will. We really appreciate it. And hope you enjoy week 8. We'll catch you back next week.
Thank you, guys.